I wasn't looking for her. I wasn't looking for anything, really. It was one of those quiet Sundays, the kind that smells like dust, old wood, and warm coffee. Sunlight leaned across the floor, soft and tired, and time itself felt slow. I walked into the study without a plan. Not to clean, not to read, just to be surrounded by silence that didn't ask questions. My fingers drifted along the bookshelf, as if something might call to me. Then I saw it, an old, leather-bound book with no title. Cracked spine, worn edges, no memory of where it came from. It was tucked behind two heavy books I hadn't touched in years. The kind you promise to read, but never do. I pulled it free. It felt heavier than it looked. And when I opened it, something slipped out. Folded paper, yellowed with age. The texture soft like fabric. Ink still clear. At the top, my name. Written in a hand I hadn't seen since the 80s. I didn't feel shock, not sadness, just stillness. Like the world was holding its breath. I sat down, held the letter in my lap. Didn't open it right away. I didn't need to. I already knew who it was from. And I knew, without reading a word, this wasn't just a letter. This was an ending I never got to finish. I don't know how long. I just sat there, holding that letter like it might fall apart in my hands. It didn't feel fragile, but I did. The paper was warm from my fingers. I stared at the fold, the way she used to do it. Crisp, precise. She was always like that. Even when she was falling apart on the inside, she kept things tidy. We were young, but not recklessly young. Not the kind of young that makes mistakes. The kind that hopes too much. We met in the fall of 1977. I remember the leaves more than her face, not because she wasn't beautiful, but because that season clung to everything we did. There was music on cassette. There were coffee mugs that never emptied. There was a bench in the park where we carved our initials, too shallow to last. She wrote me letters, even when we lived in the same city. She said her thoughts made more sense on paper. That silence was safer when folded. But I stopped writing back. Not all at once, just slower. And then never. I thought life was happening somewhere else. She was part of the chapter I could turn away from. Until now. Now, I was holding a page from a story I didn't know had kept going without me, and I still hadn't opened it. I opened it, slowly, like I might scare the words away. The crease gave icily, the paper sighed, and then, there she was, not in voice, not in photograph, but in the shape of the letters, and the way she still curled her Y at the end of my name. It read, I didn't want to leave like that, but I didn't know how to stay, either. You weren't cruel. You were just, absent. Like standing next to someone behind glass. I kept waiting for you to reach through it. I paused. Read those lines again. I don't blame you. You didn't promise me anything. But I wanted you to, so I wrote this, knowing you might never read it. And if you did, maybe it would be too late. There was no date, no return address, no signature. Just my name at the top, and her silence at the bottom. I felt something strange, not sorrow, but something older than that, a kind of recognition. Like finding your own handwriting in a language you forgot you knew. I folded it again, carefully. The way she would have wanted. Then I just sat there, still, not thinking, not moving, letting her voice finish speaking in my hands. I thought of her voice, but I couldn't remember the sound. Not clearly, just the rhythm of how she used to say my name, soft at the beginning, firm at the end. It's strange what the mind holds on to. The way her sleeve would slip when she reached for her coffee. How she always tied her scarf twice, even when it wasn't cold. That faint vanilla scent, like old bookstores. I remembered the shoes she hated, but wore anyway, because they were a gift from someone she hadn't forgiven yet. She didn't talk much about her family, but once she showed me a postcard from her mother. It had one sentence: "Be better than we were." We never said goodbye. Not really. No shouting, no dramatic exits. Just a slow fade. Like evening light across a floor no one sweeps anymore. And now, this letter. This fragile attempt to reach me from a place I no longer lived in. I wondered how long it sat there, pressed between forgotten chapters. How many times I passed that shelf without knowing she was waiting inside. Maybe she never expected me to read it. Maybe that was never the point. Maybe it was just her way of leaving something behind that wouldn't disappear when she did. I sat with the letter in my lap, watching the light shift on the floor. The room hadn't changed, but something in me had. It wasn't grief. Not exactly. It was more like a soft ache, in a place I didn't know still existed. I wondered what she'd hoped I'd do. Write back, find her, forgive myself. I didn't know where she lived now, or if she did. Some people fade into places that don't appear on maps anymore. I thought about the last time we spoke. A Tuesday, maybe. She told me I was kind. That was the last thing she said. And I remember feeling like that wasn't a compliment. It was a letting go. I looked at the bookshelf, at the dust, at the books I never read, at all the words I never said. When we're young, we think silence is gentle, like sparing someone pain. But later, you learn silence is a weight, and the longer you carry it, the heavier it becomes. I whispered her name, quietly, like I might wake something, or someone. For a moment, I imagined she whispered mine back. I wasn't a bad man back then. Just busy, distracted, chasing things I can't even name now. I thought there would be time. Time to explain. Time to write her back. Time to feel everything properly later. But time doesn't wait. It doesn't store things for us. It lets them rot, quietly, without warning. I tried to remember who I was, the day she slipped that letter into the book. What was I doing? What could have been so important that I didn't see it fall? Maybe I'd just gotten off work. Tired, annoyed by traffic. Listening to a song I don't remember now. Maybe I shelved the book without noticing. Maybe I never even knew it had been touched. And that's the hardest part. That something so gentle, so final was handed to me. And I didn't feel it at all. I thought about writing her name on a piece of paper, just to see how it looked after all these years. But I didn't. Instead, I reached for the envelope again, hoping there might be more. A second page, a hidden note, anything. But there was nothing. Just her words, and my silence. I placed it back between the pages, not to forget, but to give it weight again, because this wasn't something I wanted to carry in my pocket. It belonged here, in the place where she left it, still waiting, still honest, still hers. I didn't cry. Not then. Not even later that night. I think I was afraid that if I started, I wouldn't know what part of me was breaking, and what part was still whole. There's something about quiet grief, the kind that doesn't scream. It lives in the walls, in the corners of bookshelves, in letters that wait longer than they should. I wondered if she'd forgiven me, not for leaving, but for disappearing. There's a difference. Leaving is a choice. Disappearing is a drift. And I drifted, slowly enough that even I didn't notice it was happening. I wish I'd written her something. Anything. Even just, "I heard you. I'm here. I still think of you when it rains." But I didn't. And the truth is, she never asked me to. She just left a letter where she thought I might find it. If I ever returned to the part of myself that knew how to read her, and now I had, not in time, but maybe. Not too late, either, placed the book back on the shelf. Right where it had been, it didn't feel like closure. It felt like an open window, not wide, just enough to let in air I hadn't breathed in years. That night, I left the lamp on. The book sat on the shelf, but I kept glancing at it, like it might move, or speak again. I made tea, the kind she used to drink. Weak, with too much honey. I didn't do it on purpose. I just remembered. Without trying. Funny how memory works. Not like a flood. More like mist. It settles in quietly, and before you know it, you're breathing it in. I sat by the window. Let the steam rise from the cup. Let the silence settle. I didn't feel haunted, didn't feel regret. Just stillness, and maybe something like peace. I imagined her sitting across from me, older, wiser, smiling, maybe not asking for anything, not even answers, just there. Because memory is like that. It doesn't knock. It just walks in, and stays as long as it needs to. I whispered her name again. This time, it didn't echo. It simply belonged. I didn't open the letter again. I didn't need to. I'd already heard every word, and somehow, even her silence said enough. In the days that followed, I didn't speak about the letter. Not to friends, not to family. It wasn't a secret, just something too quiet for conversation. Some things lose meaning when said out loud. This was one of them. But something changed. Not dramatically, not like in the movies. I just slowed down, read more. Wrote a little, went walking without my phone. Listened to the sound of gravel under my shoes. Noticed the wind in the trees. I started writing letters. Not to anyone specific. Just thoughts on paper. Folded, put away. Maybe I was trying to speak back, not to her, exactly, but to the part of me she once knew. And I think that was the gift she left me. Not closure, not forgiveness, but the permission to return to the man I had almost forgotten how to be. Not better, not wiser, just more awake. She didn't ask for anything. And yet, she gave me something I didn't know I needed. Time, memory, and the space between them. I haven't moved the book. It still sits on the shelf, fifth from the left, just beneath the window. Sometimes, when the house is quiet, I glance at it, not to reread, not even to remember, just to feel its presence. There's comfort in knowing it's there, that something waited for me longer than I ever thought I deserved, and maybe one day someone else will find it. Maybe they'll open the book, find the letter, read her words, and wonder who she was writing to. I think I'd be okay with that, because the truth is, I wasn't the only one who needed her voice. We all carry something unspoken, some letter never sent, some name we say only in silence. She gave me back mine, and I gave her a place to stay. Not in memory, not in grief, but right here, in the shelf where she waits, quiet and